The Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan. This is new for 24, and in North America, or at least the United States, you have two engine options. You have a 4-cylinder, 2-liter turbo, and you get the inline 6 with traditional transmissions. Now they're both mild hybrid, which means they give you a little bit of electric assist, better start-stop, supposed to be better for emissions and fuel economy. This is priced out at about $85,000, but in all fairness, the all-wheel drive variant with the 4-cylinder, you can get this in the low 70s, and it's spec'd out great. Now, the big thing that they tried to do here was make this more of a timeless, understated luxury sedan. On the outside, this is what Mercedes-Benz does the best. It's not shouty, it's not overstyled, and while they're going to push the gimmicks in terms of a light-up grille, AMG wheels, you know, the star taillight design with animation in the taillights for the LEDs, really most people are not going to care about it. They're going to spec this out to their personality type. It does look very good, and I think on the interior spaces where there's a bit of a change from that outside. It's understated on the out, inside is pushing the technology. In fact, when you look at most of their media or their advertisements, it's all geared towards, look at what we can do. And one of the ads I saw, which was almost comical in the UK, was a middle-aged man who's a businessman who wanted this car, but he hates technology. And in the passenger seat is a woman convincing him of how great it is to have apps in the head unit, talking about the super screen.
Morning, sir. How can I help you today?
I need a ride. I'm late for a meeting.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I need to go now.
If I can just give you the key. Right now, you're sitting inside the smartest Mercedes in the world.
Great. Can we,
This car will evolve with any driver.
Any driver?
Any driver. You know, face recognition will enable
I'm not really
you
into new tech.
But the
All
thing
those
about the
phony
facial recognition...
Silicon Valley types, you know. After business school, I thought about going there myself. Shaking things up a bit. Teaching them how...
The super screen, this is the most important thing to them apparently. You have a gauge cluster, which you can option a 3D gauge cluster, which makes it three-dimensional. You also have a bonded piece of glass in the middle, which is two separate screens surrounded by enormous bezels. The primary display is your mapping software. It has all your apps that you can download from the Mercedes App Store, which gives you video conferencing via the center camera. And of course, there's only one video conferencing app right now. You can't do all the traditional ones. It has YouTube, it has TikTok, it has Angry Birds, which they'll tell you about 25 times, like some middle-aged guy cares about Angry Birds. It has a passenger display, which kind of flips its array so you can't see it as the driver when they're in certain apps. So if that's what you care about, you think this is the be-all end-all of a luxury car, you have this technology. You also have insane ambient lighting in here. It can be so bright that it will literally blind you at night and you will get in a car accident, but luckily it's multi-zoned and you can turn off what you don't like and leave on what you do, so they do a good job there. The seats are ultimately comfortable. There is seat kinetics, which means it can adjust your pelvis and your back for long trips so you don't get that fatigue. You can option massage as well as cooled seats and heated seats, and of course a heated steering wheel. They are smart about how they option this interior out, and part of that is you don't have to have everything in one big package. So you can option the air cleaner, which is cheap, which reduces outside particulate. You can also add niceties like the Burmester 4D audio for $1,000. Yes, you heard that right, a premium audio system that performs for $1,000, which is great. And there's a whole bunch of other things you can do in here to tart this up. But again, you can do it tastefully to your specification without getting dumped on a whole bunch of different packages. So let's talk about the overall size. This is an enormous vehicle on the inside. They even have a long wheelbase version in China now. The back seats are great. They're super comfortable, tons of leg and headroom. The trunk is unbelievably big. If you have problems fitting most stuff in there as a sedan user, you have too much stuff. Overall the comfort is a highlight. It's a quiet cabin. So let's get back to the Burmester 4D. So I tested this in 4D mode, which is surround, and then the traditional center, driver focus, just stereo mode. Both test very well. There is a null or cancellation effect in the middle frequency range, which I moved the mic forward and the seat forward to see if it got rid of it, but it's still slightly there, but this is a very good audio system. The 4D setup, what it really is it adds transducers in the seats. What this allows them to do is essentially create a vibration or a bass effect in the seat without having this huge bass sound profile where the subwoofer is just pounding you. Good audio systems are not bass elevated, but most car manufacturers realize that people associate great bass with a great audio system, and Burmester did not want to do that here. So they keep the bass at a nominal level, and you can augment it with the transducers in the seats. You can turn those up to feel more bass, which is great. Good audio system. Most of the other stuff in here is going to be take it or leave it. You're going to have to get in here and see if you can deal with the swipe controls and removing the physical controls for volume knob and all that stuff in the digital domain. Is it really going to sell you? But first, we're going to head in the shop. We're going to talk about some of the tiny technical changes to this car and then take it for a drive. Now, before I talk about the Mercedes-Benz, I'm going to talk about this video sponsor and the sponsor for some future projects, Flexispot. You may have seen them before in our previous videos. They manufacture office equipment, chairs, desks. They've supplied us with the E7 Plus and the E7 Pro standing desk. I've redone my office space for live streams. I've redone my office space in the shop so I can have a more cohesive work environment. The ability to raise and lower the desk gives me the flexibility not only to sit in a chair all day, but at home, at least I can put my simulator underneath it, raise it all the way up, and then I have space to do driving and practice. It's a really good workstation because you can spec it out to be ultra wide, which is what I've done. I can fit multi-monitor setups, ultra wide setups, studio monitors, everything you can pack on it because they offer wood surfaces as well, real wood surfaces. So you can mix and match however you want. But the main thing is that they are a really good affordable option. I've gotten rid of all my IKEA desks that have warped or just broken and replaced it with this. And so far I've been very happy. I prefer the E7 Pro. It is more when you spec it out right, but I feel like the leg design and all of that is more sturdy for my specific use.
Don't miss the Flexispot Amazing Anniversary Sale. Flexispot provides all kinds of standing desks to meet your demands. If you prefer extreme stability, then the E7 Plus is your top choice. If you want a premium standing desk for daily use, you can check their E7 and E7 Pro C frame. If you're on a limited budget, you can choose their E5 model. Unlock more savings by using the exclusive promo code provided in the description. Click the Flexispot link to enjoy these discounts.
Now, the Mercedes-Benz. Let's talk about it. The straight story with this is they are consistently pushing the marketing of this car. I will be completely honest. Every single thing I've looked for on this led you down a path to talking about the digital cockpit. And, you know, I've done enough research to know, we've driven enough cars to know that what they're doing here takes a lot of effort and engineering to achieve the intended results of having an ultra quiet, refined, great handling car that will eat up the miles. And sadly, they just don't talk about this stuff anymore. It's like people are not interested in it. So the main thing to take away here is they're using a multi-link front and back. This specific trim level, which is spec'd out to about $74,000, gets their 4-corner air ride package, which includes rear steer. It's capable of giving you 4.5 degrees of turning angle, and you notice it 100% when driving, which we'll also talk about. It makes it feel far more nimble, easier to drive, easier to get in and out of parking spaces, makes tighter turns more nimble. It's just the best possible combination here with the air ride and the adaptive dampers. They're constantly adjusting compression and rebound to give you the best ride possible. Really, this car specifically is about ride refinement. It's the world-class engineering part that they're great at with chassis. And just eyeballing it, you can see a few things. All these divots that they put on their under panels, it's about creating less turbulence underneath. This is a very slippery car in terms of coefficient of drag. This transfers almost all the way back. The under panels are very flat for an internal combustion car. The back half of the car is where you also notice very clever things, like almost every single bracket has a rubber isolator before it touches the body. The bracket around the rear differential is a composite. It goes from aluminum to composite, and it's all isolated around so it's not transmitting any drivetrain or rear drivetrain noise into the body of the car. And it's all these things, from the coverings and the wheel wells, the choice of tire and the wheels, and There's so much that goes into this part of the car that is just really not talked about. For a luxury product, they now give you an option of a 2-liter 4-cylinder. It's a turbocharged unit, or you can get the 6-cylinder variant. But we're gonna see if the 4-cylinder in this one kind of disappears into the background. The E-Class. Four cylinders in a luxury car. It might concern you, but here's the thing, right? Most of the engineering behind this car was about isolating out the 4-cylinder, which is kind of a strange thing in this era. But most of the cars that are sold, the E-Class are sold, have this solution. With the mild hybrid setup, the electric motor helps to augment some of that power off the line. It smooths out start, stop. I mean, really, it is an isolated experience because most of the time when you're driving this, I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm on the back-to-back of almost 3 15-hour days. I'm on 5 hours sleep each night. Like, when you're working, not saying that everybody's gonna do that, and that's not the usage case for this car, but you know, when you're working nonstop, the idea of me getting behind some edgy, very difficult, noisy car or very rough car to drive is not my idea of a good time when I have minimal downtime. And I think a lot of the people that are buying this are in a similar scenario where they want a more relaxed experience. Now, I'm gonna just ignore the technology in here for a minute and just talk about the drivability and why it is the way that it is. So when you're driving this car, really, the first thing is they prioritize isolation, right? Like they want to make sure that it's not a buzzy, noisy experience. And even over a concrete pavement like this, it tends to isolate out most of the noise. The other part is you want to be able to take a phone call, you want to be able to communicate. And when you're parked, it's like it's being in an acoustically treated room. Now, is it as good as an S-Class or like a G90 Genesis? No, but it is very, very close. And you know, it is a serene environment. When you're driving, some of the other things that they've done really well here is the damping and the way that the ride control and body control is. It has great body control without being a boat. You know, we talk about this a lot. There's this difference between having a really soft ride, and the first thing that comes to my mind is like the Grand Highlander or like a Telluride, right? Where they trade off body control for having this big floaty ride, and what you do is you get a lot of head bob. This maintains a really soft ride, but because they have really decent damper programming, it maintains softness, but you're not bobbing all over the place, so you don't get that car sick or that seasick feeling from driving this. So it's really well isolated. The other thing you notice right away is the rear steer, right? And a lot of people knock on Mercedes for their rear steer implementation because oftentimes it feels very synthetic, and you notice it right away when you turn the wheel. It always feels like, wow, how is this thing turning so quickly? And in a car like this, what it's attempting to do is make it easier to turn. It doesn't feel like you have to put a lot of effort, and the car just effortlessly rotates. It's not natural, but this car is better for it. And basically, the way every single system is tuned in here is cohesive to make this a relaxing driving experience, and that's why I really appreciate it. Now, some of the things that it does not do well is the brakes. You know, this is, you know, when we talk about on and off switch, people don't like touchy brakes. You touch the brakes and it's like you slam your head forward. This is the polar opposite of that. It takes so much pedal travel to get actually into the brakes, it feels almost like there's something wrong. And I think they could find a middle ground here in brake pedal tuning to make this feel more natural, because what winds up happening is you feel like you're always in it, and then you're literally like 2 or 3 inches into the pedal before you get real stopping power. And so I tend to ride the brakes a lot more to get this car slowed down, and I would say it's very, very disconcerting. The other thing too is some of the technology implementation. You basically hear you're turning off ambient light at night. They have a light bar at the top. There's lights everywhere, so you have to turn that off because it becomes very distracting. Things like the helping systems, like the auto brights. This is the first car I've had, because I'm in more of a rural area, The auto brights seem to be freaked out by every single reflector. If there's an animal like a raccoon on the side of the road, they turn off, they stay on too long. Some of the technology stuff doesn't disappear into the background or doesn't function perfectly. So that's something else. The semi-autonomous driving stuff does work really well in here. The cruise control is very consistent. It doesn't freak out, but it still has its bugs. Like if it's a bright day and the pavement's bright behind you, it thinks there's an object there when you're backing up. So there's these little things that other cars have that Mercedes really hasn't solved all that much in terms of that. But my favorite thing, going back to the start, is yes, it's a 4-cylinder. It's not the fastest thing. I would take the 6-cylinder for a luxury experience. When you start this thing up, it sounds like a rattly ass diesel, or just like it sounds like a shit box. But once you really drive it and realize how isolated out it is, you get over it pretty quick. You have a little bit better fuel economy, but this car is a great isolation chamber, and the suspension tuning is very, very good. And that's really what you're gonna focus on with this car out of everything else. So let's get in the final thoughts. We're gonna talk and sum all this up. Final thoughts on the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Let's cover the pros and the cons. You have a brand, although they no longer advertise it, is great at understanding how to set up a suspension and electromechanical systems for comfort without turning it into an absolute boat. You can still whip this through corners with confidence. Although some of these systems are a bit exaggerated, it is an absolute joy to drive this when you need to be comfortable and relaxed. And its performance is also equally as good for what you're expecting from this. Yes, a 4-cylinder luxury car is not the greatest thing ever. It really bothers me a lot, but it mostly fades into the background. Transmission programming is pretty good, and the mild hybrid system is adequate for what they're trying to achieve. Now, in terms of the cons of this, it's the braking system feels very unnatural and almost disconcerting. The technology implementation is broken here. And I think this was designed in an era where everybody was having a knee-jerk reaction to respond to what Tesla was doing in their cars. And they've overcompensated for here, and now they're doubling down with trying to market it, hoping that people are just gonna buy into it. And the fact is, it really needs to be scrapped at this point. It's tech for tech's sake versus actually being functional and fading into the background. And they haven't really sorted that out. I think if they can follow what they're doing on the outside and then making something more timeless on the interior with things that luxury customers really appreciate, and that is things that work properly, I think they're gonna be much better off. But I'm gonna leave you to whether or not you like this, and obviously, I think it's a really, really good car overall if you can just forget about some of those negatives. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next video.